Hi, Jessica. Thanks for joining. We'll give people a couple minutes to trickle in, but glad to see that you're an early bird too. I feel like we need some music or something.
I know, I agree. It feels so quiet.
Yeah, I can sing.
Yeah, it's a little tune.
Yeah. So, Jessica, you are a Spekit customer, correct? If I remember correctly. I know it might be hard to chat. I wonder if I can unmute you. Yes, that is correct. Awesome. And so, are you currently using Spekit for your customer success and support teams, or is it more a little bit like sales focused? Just curious what interested you in the conversation today. Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Hi, Caroline. Thanks for joining. Just going to give it a couple more minutes. Let people trickle in. And Caroline, you're also a Spekit customer as well. I know it's a little bit hard to guess. Amazing. Okay, great. Well, so far we've got two folks who are already customers. Very excited to talk a little bit more about, how we address the support call center aspect of using Spekit. But hopefully this will give you some additional ideas on how you might be able to utilize Spekit in your day-to-day with the org that you already have as well. So very, very excited to get started. We'll go ahead and let people trickle in. I am going to start sharing my screen. And then Angela from our lovely marketing department will be keeping an eye on the chat. So if you have any questions, just throw them in there. But we will reserve some time at the end of the call for questions as well. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. And so just to kick us off, we're going to be really doing a deep dive here into what success can look like for your call center, your customer support employees that are really on the front lines of addressing your customers and having very, very important interactions. And so excited to talk through what that looks like. As far as an agenda today, we'll start with who am I? Why am I here speaking to you? And then we'll talk about why this approach to your call center, your support teams with just-in-time learning. Why is it important? What can you expect? And then we'll go ahead and go into the demo itself. We'll be spending the majority of our time actually in Salesforce, in Service Cloud. But keep in mind that the experience that you're going to see today is going to be the same across the tech stack. So maybe you've got folks working out of Zendesk or another platform. We can, of course, support workflows in those platforms as well. And then we'll dive into a little bit of content creation. What does that actually look like? How can we utilize our newest feature in development, Spekit AI, to help you create content with ease on the go, as well as utilizing our out-of-the-box content that we've created for teams such as yourself. And so with that, who am I? Why am I here speaking to you today? My name is Morgan. I am our solutions consultant here at Spekit. I joined Spekit in 2021 as an SDR. So if you're not familiar with that role, it is the most entry level of sales positions. I had never looked at Salesforce, had never sold anything really. I was a professional ballet dancer for 12 years. I did nonprofit development for a little bit before I found myself here. And the reason why I'm so passionate about just-in-time learning is because I was very similar to a lot of your call center and support employees. I had never, I had limited professional experience. I was coming from a background that was not necessarily related to my role, at Spekit and in sales. And I had to learn very, very quickly and adapt very, very quickly. And I firmly believe that without our approach to just-in-time learning and learning in the flow of work, that I would not have been able to ramp as quickly as I did and see success as quickly as I did. And so now I have the opportunity to come and share that story and those techniques with folks such as yourselves and anyone who's watching the recording today, which, by the way, you will be getting an email with the recording. So don't worry about that if you need to pop in and out. So with that, I do want to touch on, why just-in-time learning for your call center employees. And so a little bit, related to my story, what we find often with folks working in call centers is that you have employees with varying degrees of professional experience. You might have employees at varying degrees of age. How do you train someone who's Gen Z and someone who's a baby boomer? There's a big difference there. How do you address everyone's different learning styles? You might have a global team with leadership in completely different countries. So how do you manage time zones? How do you ensure that you're communicating in a way where your teams are going to be able to be effective in their roles as quickly as possible? And so the other thing that we see too is that this vast amount of knowledge and process is very, very difficult to retain. And when it's difficult to retain, people are going to have to search for it. But while they're searching for it, they might miss information that they're looking for. It leads to that longer response time and higher error rates. And that, of course, leads to decreased customer satisfaction. And, with that, there's constant changes too to those processes, products, or guidelines. Maybe you're having to iterate to stay relevant in the marketplace, or maybe you're dependent on government regulations that can change at the drop of a hat. And so, of course, your customer experience starts with your employee experience. And when there's an industry that is known to be a little bit, have a little bit higher turnover, that makes the employee experience all the more important, because when you're dealing with high turnover, you know that all of these efforts are magnified 10 times because you're having to repeat this over and over and over and over again. And so at Spekit, we believe in a world where learning happens in the flow of work, where knowledge finds your team when and where they're working, and it's instantly accessible. But content is contextual and personalized, so it's trusted by the employee and they know that they're getting the right information at the right time. And with that, we make it easy to master skills, new processes at work. We make it as easy and enjoyable as it is at home as well. And that leads to that greater sense of employee satisfaction and therefore customer satisfaction as well. And so this is the simple yet spectacular future that we're building here at Spekit. We want to say goodbye to inaccuracies and long response times and hello to a simple yet spectacular future. So there's a couple of different ways that you're going to see today and how we help you manage that. The first is through our spotlights. And a spotlight is going to be an in-app notification. The reason why this is important is because whether you're onboarding new employees or onboarding existing employees onto a new process, it's important to communicate their learning when and where they need to apply it. And so with these spotlights, you can actually communicate whether it's a change or whether it's just a piece of information that someone needs to see at this point in their workflow. You can communicate that when and where it makes sense on any URL. So again, you're going to see it today in Salesforce Service Cloud, but the same idea applies across the tech stack wherever I'm working as an employee. But of course, we want for employees to have access to the answers to their questions at any point in their workflow. And so our Spekit sidebar is actually going to be the companion for the employee that's going to follow them across their workflow, whether they're working in Salesforce or any other app. where they can easily search your entire knowledge base and gain instant access to the information that they need, when they might not have it tied to necessarily a specific field or piece of information in an app. Of course, for the folks on this call, gaining or judging retention is going to be something that's very important as well. A lot of times what we see is that those processes to go about measuring retention are time consuming for both the person creating them and then also for the employee who's taking them. And so with that, we have our knowledge checks. Our knowledge checks are going to be short, bite-sized quizzes that are going to be delivered in the flow of work for the employee and easily creatable by you and your team. And then finally, we'll touch on those embedded specs. So embedded contextual pieces of information that's going to be accessible for the employee when and where those questions arise. We'll touch on the status of a case, how to escalate, and how to manage a sensitive conversation with someone who might be a VIP or someone that your employees are going to need a little bit of extra guidance as to how to navigate those sensitive conversations. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and dive in. I'm going to stop sharing my screen while I pull up Salesforce here. Oh, we've had a couple more people join us. Hi, welcome everyone. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. So let's imagine that I am one of your call center employees and I've logged into Salesforce. It is my first day at work. Maybe I'm, a couple of weeks past onboarding. I'm in my workflow and maybe I'm in a completely different time zone than my boss. Maybe my 7 a.m. is her 7 p.m. How do I actually get notified that there's an update to a process or a product or something that I need to know in order to be successful in my role? Especially when I'm going to be having real-time conversations with customers and I know that I need to have instant access to that information. I don't have time to put someone on hold or transfer them to another person in the organization while I'm trying to figure out what it is that I need to do. With a Spotlight, one of those in-app notifications, you can actually communicate that when and where it makes sense for the employee and their workflow. And again, you can choose what teams you do want to actually see this. But let's say that I've got a mandatory weekly update that I need to take a look at before I start executing. Maybe it's a process change or a product change, but this is telling me I need to review the information and actually take a quiz on it. But before that, maybe I want to review a video or something like that. And again, this you can watch directly from the Spotlight there. So maybe it's something about a spreadsheet or literally anything that you want to train on. In this instance, I'm going to go ahead and view the information. And so in this case, there's a couple of different updates. Maybe it's something about a reminder about a transfer process. Maybe it's something related to a specific conversation that I know that I'm going to need to be having later in the day. Maybe I need to review additional information on how to actually do this process professionally. And so, of course, for teams who are responsible for this, creating this training and pushing it out, you might need to ensure that there's, it's clear who actually created this, that it's been approved and created by your team. You're also likely going to need to judge the retention of your employees with this knowledge. And so with that, you can actually leverage our knowledge checks. What we've seen be really, really successful for our call center teams is, can you actually provide a little bit of an incentive for your employees to take the knowledge check so that you can ensure that folks are actually retaining? We've seen people leverage that strategy and have a lot of success with adoption of actually taking the knowledge checks and things like that. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and test my knowledge. I'm going to go ahead and preview this since I created it. And this is actually going to quiz me on the information that was in that piece of information that was pushed out to me. So can the customer go on hold before the transfer? I'm just going to fill this out quickly so that you can see what this looks like as I finish. And so again, simple, bite-sized, contextual, and delivered in the flow of work, the same idea as the rest of our platform. You can have this set up too to show, hey, actually, you got this answer wrong. This is the correct answer. Or if you want for folks to retake it, you can actually hide the correct answers and have them retake it again. So it's up to you how you want that information to be delivered as well. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. Let's say I went through that. I proved that I remembered my training and my information. Now it's time for me to actually go and start filling out Salesforce. And so with that, there's always a question of, what does this field mean? Where do I find that information that I know was about this specific type of conversation I was supposed to be having? You know, if I can't find it, I'm either going to ping my manager or a colleague, which may or may not work depending on what time zone they're in. And if they're busy doing other things unrelated to answering repetitive questions from their employees. Or I'm going to dig through maybe SharePoint or the LMS, trying to find just a little bite-sized piece of information that I need. And with Spekit, we want to bring those answers to the employees when and where the questions are actually going to arise. And so for that, we leverage what we call our specs, which are going to be those embedded bite-sized pieces of information. And so, you know, what does assigned mean? Oh, a case is assigned when ownership has been changed to an active support representative. What is it impacted by? Service agreement of the customer, geography, things of that nature. But what does escalated mean? And how do I get there? What are the process stages of case escalation support? But now I'm going in and I don't understand, you know, how do I actually choose what type of status to select? All of this information surfaces to me when and where I have those questions. And these can be embedded on any object, field, or pick list within Salesforce. We can also embed these in other applications as well. These can also be as simple or as robust as you want. So maybe you've got information that is best delivered in a table. Maybe you have information that you might want to leverage a PDF for. Maybe it's just a quick bullet list. For sensitive conversations with folks who might be considered VIPs, obviously it's going to be very important to ensure that people actually know what to say in those specific cases. So maybe you want to provide a call script. And from here, you know, maybe this is something that your folks are dealing with often. Your end users can actually favorite this so that it's more easily accessible via our sidebar. They can also react with these emojis here, which is a way to provide real-time feedback to you and your team if you are creating this information, which we'll get to here in a moment, as to, hey, actually, this information is out of date. This information isn't helping me in my workflow. This would actually populate your email, whatever you're using for your email, and have you, as the end user, send an email to whoever owns this information so that they can fix it instantly. I like to use an example. Our CEO actually created some specs in our production org, and she filled out these amazing links that we're going to link out to this amazing information. And she forgot to hyperlink all of them. And so I marked it as confused. It prompted me to send an email to her, and she had it fixed by the end of the day. So that's how we work with you to really close those feedback loops for you and your team. So I know that we're coming up here almost at 10 minutes till the end of the call. I do see a question here. How do you link them on the application? And so that's a great question. There's a couple of different ways that you can go about it. And this is actually a great segue into a little bit of the content creation aspect that I wanted to touch on. And so there's a few different ways that you can think about it. Let's say that I wanted to define, case source. And so with our Salesforce integration, you can actually just highlight here and click S on your keyboard. And it will show me that this is undefined. And so I'm going to go ahead and come in here and create spec. And this is actually where you can go in and edit and link things out. And so if you have a PDF that you want to be sharing here, you can actually embed it directly from our rich text editor. Or let's say that you wanted to hyperlink out to something, you could actually just create the link here as if you were, hyperlinking out to, let's say, I'm just going to use this example of this deck. A new deck to use. So that's one way. We can also embed anything that you'd like as well, if it has an embed code. And so I'm going to go ahead and pull up, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen really quickly. I'm going to pull up a video that we can actually embed within the spec as well.
In this Spekit simplified video.
So let's say here, I've got this video in YouTube that I would like to embed. Maybe it's a training video, maybe it's just got a little bit more information that I'm going to go ahead and embed in the spec that we saw before. I can simply come in here, click share, embed, copy. And I'm going to actually just do Command V. And now it lives in that spec as well. But this is actually a great time to touch on our newest feature in development, which is actually Spekit AI. And so what we've done is we have integrated with OpenAI to make it very, very easy for you and your teams to actually go in and create content. And so let's say that I wanted to create a list of discovery questions that I wanted for my employees to be asking on the phone when they're with a customer. So I could actually come in here into the spec and just say, create a list of discovery questions for my reps to ask on calls. I click the little specky and click summarize. And like any good AI solution, it's going to take a little bit to think. But what you'll see here is that it does create that list of questions. And then you can simply format it as you like. Create a table and things like that. Adrian, does that address your question? Great, awesome. So another thing that we know with call centers and with the amount of changes and the amount of new employees that you're getting, it might not even be enough to have AI to help you to be able to embed links and PDFs easily. And so some of the ways that we help folks do that is by actually templating out different ways that they can push out updates to their team. So they can simply just copy and paste information so that they can continuously repeat that and not have to duplicate their effort every week. And so there's, again, a few ways that we help you do that. I'm just going to pull this up, show you our search here. If you'll remember at the beginning of the call, we did talk about mandatory weekly updates. So I'm going to go ahead and search mandatory updates. And you'll see here, I have a topic of information. You can think of a topic like a folder. And these are all the updates that have been pushed out to my team. But here, I have this template. And so I could simply copy this content, create a new spec, and paste. And now I have a template to go off of if I actually did need to push out these updates to the team and execute very, very quickly. And so there are a couple of different ways that we help folks do that. That's one of the ways that we've seen be really successful when you do have a lot of updates, as call centers often do, and you need to push it out to the team quickly and repeatedly as well. So I do want to pause. I know we've got about 6 minutes left. I like to keep the last 5 minutes or so for any questions. But please let me know if you have questions. I'm always happy to connect on LinkedIn as well, go through things personally. Please reach out. I believe it's LinkedIn/Morgan Buchanan 1. There's already someone with Morgan Buchanan. Have to talk to them about that. But if you do have questions, please put them in the chat. Otherwise, I would love to connect, talk more, learn a little bit more about all of you and your roles. And in the meantime, thanks so much for joining.